Welcome to People Doing Good for Others, where we honor and praise and hold in the light those who are truly making significant contributions in our communities. I'm Gary York, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to be with you. We want to thank Wilkes Communications and River Street Productions, 100.9 WIFM, for this opportunity. And our featured guest today is Eddie Barnes. He's the planning director of Wilkes County, a native here. He came to the county in 1997, became a director in 2001, and he's going to share with us his experience and his hope and the wonderful opportunity of serving Wilkes County and its wonderful people. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Gary.
Thank you for being here, Eddie Barnes.
Thank you for an invitation to come this morning.
And you're a native. Tell us a little bit about growing up here and even about the cabin of 1840.
Okay, yeah, great. I've grown up here my whole life, native of Wilkes County. I went to Wilkes Central High School, graduated there in 1986, married a local girl here, a Wilkes County girl, and enjoyed my time in Wilkes County growing up, a lot of great friendships and community involvement, churches and organizations that I've been able to be involved in. And so it's been a great opportunity to do that.
Good. Tell us about your wife, her name, and she had a career, and let's go there for just a moment, if you will.
Sure. I'm married to Leslie Settle Barnes now. We've been married 21 years. We have one daughter that's a junior at Wilkes Central High School. And so Leslie grew up here in Wilkes County, went to Wilkes Central also. And she's a teacher, semi-retired right now, and actually serves on the Wilkes County Board of Education. And has been doing that for the past couple of years.
So I enjoy the Teacher and Principal of the Year nights when she's usually at the table.
Yes.
Well, she is, and I'm there, so I get to sit with the school board members, and you're always there too. So I'm thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thank you for always being there and giving those teachers the recognition they deserve as well, because they do a great job here in our schools.
Eddie Barnes, tell us about some heritage legacy of your family in the county, if you will.
All right. Well, my family's got some deep roots here in Wilkes County. I've been here before the Revolutionary War in the mid-1700s is when our family first settled here in Wilkes County, and had several family members that served in the Revolutionary War.
Wow.
Yeah, so one they nicknamed Deaf John from the cannon fire that he encountered there during the Revolutionary War, and actually served under General George Washington.
Really?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very, very interesting. And we've had some wonderful family members that's researched that and really shared that with the family. It's been really a great experience to learn more about our ancestral roots. And we actually have a log cabin that we restored up in Boomer that was built in 1840. And several years ago, about 30 years ago, the family raised money to restore the old cabin and really build it back from the foundation up using the old logs that was there. And various family members have donated furniture that they had inherited and been passed down through the generations. So we have a great opportunity to gather there once a year for family reunions and just a time to fellowship together. And it's really helped us to get more connected with family that many of them come from many states far away. So it's been a great opportunity to reach out to some of those family members that otherwise we probably wouldn't have gotten to know.
Thank you, Eddie. You were also Wilkes Central and Wilkes Community College. Just a little bit about that experience.
Yes, sir. Yeah, like I said, I did graduate from Wilkes Central High School in 1986, and then graduated from Wilkes Community College with an associate's degree. So great experiences there. Certainly we're very fortunate to have, great educational programs here in Wilkes County, and Wilkes Community College is a big part of that.
And you were a surveyor for a number of years?
Yes, sir. Over 10 years. Did land surveying and just some great experiences doing that. It really helped me in the career I'm in now, and being able to learn about land and land use values and really the geography of the area, getting familiar with all those things. And so it's a great opportunity to work in that field.
Tell us about the opportunity of joining the county.
Well, that came in 1997. I was surveying at that time, and Wilkes County had a position open for a planner, one level, which was they're looking for somebody that could be a plan reviewer. And at that time, there was a lot of subdivision development being done in Wilkes County in the mountainous areas, and so there was a lot of activity going on and in building new developments. And so I was hired to be a plan reviewer. And
what is a reviewer? Now, tell us a little bit about that part of it.
Okay, well, basically what I would do when a developer would take a raw piece of land, several hundreds of acres sometimes, and they would, of course, have to develop that into smaller lots, subdivide it. They would build streets and other types of infrastructure that had to be there, roads, bridges, power, water, all those types of things. So my position was really to help work with the developer as they would plat those developments out, and as they would put those on the ground, put those improvements, build the roads and things like that. I would go out to the sites, and we have ordinances that regulate how roads are being constructed, and just make sure that the roads are being constructed to the standards of the ordinance.
So it's kind of a compliance person.
It is a
You say,
compliant.
Are we following the rules?
That's right. It is a compliant. It's really just to protect the public, to make sure when they're buying property that they're getting property that has a legal access, that it has roads that are built to safety standards, and roads that are going to be there, lasting, and make sure that the developer has done enough work and their due diligence, and really just protecting the public.
Protected.
To see that the roads are going to be, built correctly, and also the roads are going to be something that's going to last for many, many years. And so I was kind of the liaison between the developer and then the planning board, which would actually be the formal review board for any subdivisions in the county. I would present the subdivisions to the planning board, let them know that it has met the various standards that had been approved by the county commissioners, and then the county commissioners would also give approval to new developments here in the county. So,
how many folks are on the planning board?
We have a Wilkes Joint Planning Board that is 12-member board.
12.
It has 4 appointees from the towns, 2 from Wilkesboro and 2 from North Wilkesboro, and then 8 from the county at large.
Okay. And the county commissioners appoint those folks?
They do appoint the 8 county members, and then the 4 are appointed from the respective town councils.
So, wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
That's
good. And it's open to the public. So anytime, we generally meet the 4th Mondays of each month, and those meetings are always open to the public and welcome for the public to attend those.
Okay. Who's John Yates?
John Yates is our county manager. Been for nearly 10 years, I believe now, and just provides a great working environment for our county employees, and just always there to support the staff. And appreciate John.
So he's the leader then of staff holders like you.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. Back to serving the public, protecting the public. Would you expand on that a little bit?
Be glad to, Gary. Really, that's our role. In the planning department is to pass ordinances and regulate the ordinances that are passed by the county commissioners to really protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. That's what all ordinances have to do, and that's their intent to do. And so we have various types of ordinances. We have the subdivision ordinance that we talked briefly about. We have mobile home park ordinances, watershed ordinances, floodplain development ordinances, noise and nuisance ordinances, and there's several types. We regulate namings of streets, and we assist the public in some grants that can help to rehabilitate homes for elderly and disabled folks. So we really have a wide gamut of things that we do for the public, and glad to be able to help.
Back to the addresses. Just kind of walk through, say, a road that does not have an address, and then a subdivision, and give it. How does that work?
Well, Wilkes County has about 3,500 named streets in the county. We're one of the largest counties in North Carolina, and 756 square miles, so a very large county, predominantly rural county. But if somebody, of course, every home has an address that's there for the E911 purposes. So if someone calls for any type of emergency response, that they can be found quickly. And so we have a method that we determine those addresses by. It's really done by taking a mile, 5,280 feet, and breaking that down into tenths and even hundredths of a mile. So when you go out, if your address is 2,500, then we know you're nearly half a mile from the nearest intersection. So that kind of helps the emergency response vehicles to know how far they're going on a particular route. Of course, now we have GPS, and that's changed things a lot. It's made it a lot more accurate to pinpoint locations. But we do have to, if you have more than 3 residences on a driveway, that is required to have a name. So that name is done by petition. We allow the residents that live on that drive to pick their road name. And that's one reason we have so many names, because of that type of situation. But it's really just to help.
So it's by petition.
It is by petition.
Folks on the street.
Folks on the street.
Name the street.
They name the street. Yeah, and we just want a majority of approval, from the residents there, and ask them just to get together and come up with some choices for road names. And then we try to select their choice. If it's not been used somewhere else, we try not to duplicate road names if possible. But then that new road will be named, and it goes into the E911 database. And so if we had York Street, when Gary York on York Street, we know where to find you, Gary.
Yeah, okay. Eddie Barnes, give us an example of something that would come before the planning board, and kind of how long would it take to get it there, and just a little bit about, so folks would know what's the planning board do, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Well, the planning board is really that appointed body that's kind of the liaison to the county commissioners to see that certain development standards are being met. We have zoning ordinances and subdivision ordinances, things of that nature. So if a developer, for instance, wanted to take a piece of land, so they had a 50-acre farm, and they decided that now they want to divide that up into 1-acre parcels, and they would have, of course, a surveyor to do the design work, but then that would have to meet the standards of the ordinance for the road approval, and we require the roads to be constructed and bonded to make sure that those roads are built to standards. That's something the planning board would review.
Planning board reviews it.
They do. They review that, and they make sure that those standards are there as well.
The rules.
Yeah, they're just following the rules. Another thing that's popular in front of the planning board is often there's the strict standards of the ordinance may not be able to be met. So all ordinances have a variance mechanism built into them, where if the applicant can show that by deviating from the rules that they're not really going to cause any harm to an adjoining neighbor, then the Board of Adjustment, which is part of the planning board, they can deviate from those rules to a set standard, but they can give some relaxation of particular rules, particularly if it's a setback and you have to be 30 feet from a property line or 15 feet from a side property line. The board can allow you to go maybe 5 feet to the property line. And what we do is generally we reach out to the neighbors by letter and by other forms of advertisement, letting them know there is a hearing in front of the board, so they have a right to come and speak. And if they have any opposition, they certainly can make that known to the board, and then the board can make their decision based on that information.
So, I guess in simple terms, let's say there's a side yard setback of, you said 30 feet, and they possibly want to put it at 27.
Right.
Is that, and you would make that recommendation to the Board of Adjustment?
We would. We have an application process that the homeowner would fill out. They would have to show that several criteria that they have to prove. Generally, it has to be something that is peculiar to the property itself. It can't be just that it's economically more feasible for them. There has to be some kind of topographical or other type of impairment to the property that would cause them to need to be closer to that property line. Mm-hmm. But if they can prove that, then they can present that case to the Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Adjustment can take that matter up. And like I said, if we're not getting opposition from adjoining property owners, then that's generally something that they can give them that relief.
Relief.
Yes.
That's a good word. Share with us what a front yard means.
That's not as simple as it sounds sometimes.
Right.
You know, that's the front yard, the way we look at a front yard would be where your front door faces the street.
Front door faces.
And anything from the corners, perpendicular corners of the home out toward the street would be considered your front yard.
Okay.
And then just that small area of the side of the home would be, of course, your side yard, and then everything in the rear yard. But sometimes it's not always as simple as it sounds, because sometimes there's people that want their front of their home to face a particular amenity. Maybe it's a view.
A view.
Maybe if it's a lake property, they'd want the front of the home to be on the lake, and although the street would be on the opposite side. So there are times that the board has to make an interpretation of what that front yard is.
So that's another thing you do.
That can be, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So the name of roads, let's talk about land use a little bit. I think it's a good time for you to really get into this.
Try to expand on that a little bit if I can, Gary. And it's really an all-encompassing term when you say land use. There's many different aspects to what that really is. The most common that people are familiar with are zoning laws that regulates the type of use you can do on a property. Wilkes County does not have county-wide zoning, but we do have partial county zoning. So there's particular areas in the county, generally around more populated neighborhoods, that have zoning. And so that will say certain areas can be used for commercial use, certain areas can be used for residential.
So zone means in this zone, an owner can do this.
That's correct. That's exactly what it means. Okay. That's exactly what it means. So there's certain zones that allow for manufactured housing and certain zones that don't. Certain zones only allow for site-built housing. Certain zones only allow for commercial uses. So one thing we do when the applicant comes in to start the building process, we have to determine if they're in any of those particular restricted zones, and then if give them clearance to go ahead with the building process. Another land aspect use is the floodplain. Yeah. That's something that, of course, the county has many streams and rivers here in Wilkes County, and we have to determine if those streams and rivers have a designated flood zone on them. And those flood zones are designated by the federal government through federal insurance rate maps that are done through the geological surveys and hydrological studies, so they can determine where those flood zones are.
Where the water has been before?
That's historically, they look at where the water has been before. They also look at the overall basin of how much water could potentially be produced in a 100-year storm. And so they look at models, and so often you hear of a 100-year floodplain. And that can be a confusing term because people think, well, when is the 100 years? But it's really not what it is. It's a percentage chance of
percentage.
Yes,
okay.
They look at a 1% chance in any given year in a 100-year period as being in a floodplain, and that's based on those historical models. It's based on how much water could potentially fall at a historical storm. And basically, fill those streams to the flood stage. So there's a lot of modeling there, a lot of engineering that happens to produce those floodplains. And our job is to...
means you can't fill or build in past that line.
That's right, yeah. You want to keep those floodplains natural so they can do what they're intended to do. And floodplains are built to be a relief valve basically for the streams. And when those streams reach flood stage, the water, has an escape route. And so, of course, there's low-lying areas. And our responsibility is to keep those areas natural and keep building from happening in those areas. And there are cases when building can happen in those areas.
You had an example we talked about earlier about a lady that, tell that story.
Okay, yeah, sir. Well, in 2009, Wilkes County had a very bad flood. That was a flash flood. And it really, about 7 inches of rain happened in a very short period of time, and less than a 24-hour period of time. And several of the rivers and streams here got to flood stage. And one particular area that got heavily damaged was in the Moravian Creek area. and there were several manufactured homes that got flooded, and actually it had to be swift water rescues done in the pre-dawn hours for those residents.
Wow.
To escape those homes. Those homes were placed there prior to Wilkes County being involved in the floodplain regulation, which we started in 2003. So that's really the evidence of the danger of developing in areas that are in the reality of it.
Okay.
We had one instance where a couple had came in to get a permit from the planning office after that 2003 ordinance came in place, and they were on the same stream there, Moravian Creek, very close to these homes that got flooded, and they actually had put their home too close to the stream, and we would not permit them to have an occupancy permit. So they had to have the home moved back further from the stream,
yes.
which was not real popular.
Sure.
You know, so unfortunately, some of the things that we do are not always real popular. But you know, they did comply with that and got the home moved back further from the stream. And when that flood happened in 2009, they actually called that day and thanked us for having their home removed, because their home would have been severely damaged by the flood if it had been where they originally placed it. So it is, you know, there are some great examples out there why these ordinances are necessary.
Eddie Barnes, tell us about the technical term of watershed. What does that mean?
Okay, watershed is really just a drainage basin. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. It's areas that, of course, you have feeder streams that come into larger rivers, and here in Wilkes County, we're a very mountainous area, and so you have large basins that all these areas will drain from top of ridges and down to these streams. And so the watersheds can be, you know, thousands and thousands of acres that go into the streams. And it's just really a drainage basin, and those basins are now protected, you know, through the watershed.
One feeds into others, and they get bigger, and
they just get bigger as they go down.
The Atlantic Ocean.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Is it the PD Yadkin? Are you part of that?
Well, we're in the Upper Yadkin watershed.
Upper Yadkin.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's by definition.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So if we were in Boone, all of our water would be going to the Gulf of Mexico.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what the continental divide, and
Well,
it's to digress a little bit, but that's
the dam, the role it might play in some of the things that go on here.
Yeah, well, the dam has been a great asset for Wilkes County. Of course, historically, you know, we had a lot of flooding in the Yadkin Valley Basin for many years. Devastating floods from 1916 and 1940 are two of the most notorious, very deadly floods and dangerous floods. And from that point, you know, really there was evidence that we needed a flood control reservoir to really protect the people here in Wilkes County and on downstream in Elkin and points further downstream. So in 1964, the W. Kerr Scott Reservoir got constructed, okay, and impounded the water. And since that point has not only served as that flood control, but a wonderful recreational area for Wilkes County. Yeah. It attracts nearly 900,000 visitors annually.
Wow.
So it's just a wonderful asset here for the county for tourism, recreation, and a lot of the things that it can provide.
Tell us about say a couple's getting ready to have a new home, to start a process. Let's encourage them to call you or come in. Let's just walk through that for me, if you will.
Okay, absolutely, Gary. And for most people, they do this one time in their life,
Yes.
And so they're not familiar with the building processes and the permitting processes that you need to go through. And it can be a little bit overwhelming for some people coming in and get started. So we do try to just walk them through that process. Really, there's a three-step process to building. First is the land use planning aspect of it, where we have to determine what areas that you're building in, and those areas comply with all the various regulations that the county has, floodplains and zoning and those types of factors. The other would be once you decide that the land is going to work, that area, then you need to know that you can get septic and water. So you have to have wastewater disposal, and you have to have a drinking supply.
Yeah, sure.
So there's an office that handles that. It's called our Environmental Health Office. And then the final step to that is your actual building permit process, where they look at all the structural aspects of the home from the foundation, you know, up
Is
to
it
the
safe and those type
That's
things?
correct. And they have building codes that they have to look at, you know, to regulate and make sure the home is being built to those standards. So it's really just, you know, a three-step process. And so definitely people need to start with the planning office, and we can help you through that process and get you started and point you in the right direction to the other aspects of it as you need to go through that process.
Could you help us by defining what is a PERC test?
A PERC test is really where the ground is evaluated itself to see how quickly a hole is dug. A core sample, generally about 2 feet deep, is taken by a sanitarian that works in an environmental health office, and they will look at that soil, analyze it, and make sure that the soil will percolate, which basically means that it will absorb water in a certain given time, and that's what that basically does.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to thank our sponsors, River Street Productions and Wilkes Communications, and for these opportunities to help people find their way, you know, to work through things. And you're here to protect us and to help us and to get us started right, and probably save a lot of time and maybe even some money.
Yeah.
And so we want to go through that. And I want to thank you also for your knowledge level. It's just really wonderful to be with someone who's very capable and competent. And if you'd like to share a few things as we end, Eddie Barnes.
Well, thank you, Gary. I certainly appreciate that compliment, and you know, certainly been fortunate to work with a great staff and you know, great other employees there in Wilkes County that I've learned a lot from as well, and to you know, be able to serve the public, work with the public, and hopefully help them out through their process there as they look to build their home or start a new business here in Wilkes County. Visit Wilkes County, whatever their choice is to do here. We just want to be there for them.
Let's end with, where are you? The location, the street address. You have 10 big parking places there in front. Tell us about your office and your phone number, if you will.
Sure, Gary. The Wilkes County office is located at 110 North Street in Wilkesboro. We're just about a block off of Main Street near the Wilkes Heritage Museum. And the planning office is in room 217, and my phone number is 336-651-7582. We can also be found on the internet at wilkescounty.net, and a lot of the ordinances and questions, emails can be found at that website. So just like to encourage people to reach out to us for any needs they may have.
You have a servant's heart, I know that, and we want to be helping people to find a way. Thank you very much, Eddie
Thank you,
Barnes.
Gary.
Come
Thank
back.
you. Appreciate your invitation.